Got an important job today, haven't you? What's your role this time? At the start of the match, you decide who serves and who receives. Take a look. It's a bit larger than usual. It all started quietly. First, whispers, then sirens. In the early hours of a crisp spring morning, helicopters were spotted over Balmoral Castle, slicing through the calm Scottish skies. Moments later, a convoy with blacked-out windows raced down a private runway toward an upscale hospital in London. The official statement from Buckingham Palace was brief and controlled. King Charles III is under medical supervision following complications from his recent diagnosis. But behind that formal wording, something major was unfolding. The king was gravely ill, and for the first time during his reign, the throne stood empty. As the British public held its breath, royal protocols took over. A long unspoken question finally demanded an answer. Who would take charge in the king's absence? Most assumed it would be Queen Camilla. She had been there through scandal, transition, and coronation. She wore the crown. She held the title. She believed the role was hers by right. But when the decision came, her name was never mentioned in the marble halls of the Privy Council. Camilla wasn't asked to lead emergency briefings. She didn't receive classified updates. Instead, it was Princess Anne, Princess Royal, the king's only sister. The woman who had never sought power was suddenly handed the reins. Camilla was blindsided. Reports say she wasn't even consulted before the decision was quietly implemented. Within minutes, a calculated leak confirmed the truth. Princess Anne had been named acting queen, stepping in as regent while Charles was incapacitated. Inside Buckingham Palace, chaos erupted. How did Camilla respond? One aide put it plainly. She completely lost it. She screamed, cried, and paced as if someone had ripped the crown from her head in plain sight. To the world, it looked like a practical constitutional move. Anne, with decades of steady service, was the calm leader the moment demanded. But to Camilla it felt like something else entirely. A betrayal. A personal blow. A quiet removal masked by protocol. Because this wasn't just a temporary arrangement, it was a symbolic shift in power. At that moment, the monarchy, already strained by scandal, aging leadership, and fading public trust, stood on the edge of something even more volatile. A battle within the crown itself. This is the story of a queen consort quietly sidelined, a princess unexpectedly rising to power, and a royal family divided. And it all began the moment King Charles collapsed. But before we continue, we'd love for you to hit the subscribe button if you're enjoying this video. If you just did, we truly appreciate it. Now, let's get back to the main content. What was supposed to be a peaceful retreat turned into a turning point. After weeks of royal duties, charity appearances, and private meetings, King Charles had gone to Balmoral Castle, his cherished Highland refuge, for some rest. Palace aides described it as a short break, nothing serious, just a chance to breathe and reset. But those close to him knew the truth. Despite maintaining a calm and composed image, the king had been quietly fighting a growing health battle. Rumors had been swirling for months, especially since the palace had admitted he was being treated for an unspecified type of cancer. Official updates remained vague. Responding well to treatment, resting comfortably, in good spirits. Still, insiders noticed the changes. His fatigue, his frailty, the noticeable weight loss hidden beneath expertly tailored suits. Alone in the quiet of the Highlands, the king's condition suddenly worsened. According to those with inside knowledge, Charles collapsed in his private study. A royal footman reportedly found him early in the morning, slumped in a chair, pale and struggling to breathe. The royal medical team was summoned immediately. Emergency protocols were set in motion. A helicopter was dispatched from RAF Lossiemouth. Under heavy security, the king was flown to a private location, believed to be the Royal London Hospital, where a secure wing had already been prepared, just in case. The whispers began the moment the helicopter left the ground. Local staff were kept quiet. Communications were restricted. Non-essential activities across the Balmoral estate were paused. Senior royals were alerted in order. First Prince William, then Princess Anne. Finally, Queen Camilla was notified. She had been in London preparing for a charity appearance. The news hit her hard. A palace staffer said she was visibly shaken, but she quickly moved into action. She began making calls, expecting to be briefed on the regency process, fully assuming she would be the one to oversee royal affairs during the king's incapacitation. But that's not how it unfolded. Behind the scenes, urgent meetings were already taking place at Whitehall and the Privy Council office. According to constitutional procedures, when a monarch becomes medically unfit to rule, a regent is appointed. Technically, this role is passed to the next eligible adult in the line of succession, but only after approval by a council of senior royals and top state officials. Though Camilla held the title of Queen Consort, she had no legal authority to rule. With Charles out of commission, the throne was, for a moment, effectively leaderless. The question was, who would step in? The answer came quickly and quietly. The council chose Princess Anne. To some, it was a bold decision. To others, it was the only one that made sense. Princess Anne, the Princess Royal, had long served as the backbone of the monarchy. She never chased the spotlight, never vied for power, but she had always shown up. She carried out more royal duties than any other member of the family, year after year, consistently and without fuss. Trusted, private, respected, and most importantly, she wasn't emotionally attached to the crown. She had nothing to prove, no crown to chase. And in a time of unprecedented crisis, she offered something the monarchy desperately needed: stability. By the time Camilla arrived at Buckingham Palace, the decision had already been finalized. According to one senior source, she walked in believing she was about to take charge. Instead, she stepped into a palace already pivoting around Anne. The shock was immediate. In a private meeting with the Lord Chamberlain, Camilla was told that Princess Anne would assume ceremonial and state responsibilities as acting sovereign until the king recovered. Camilla would retain her title, but not her power. What followed was silence, long, cold, and heavy. And then came the fury. But that was the next chapter, because the unthinkable had already happened. The king had fallen. And in the sudden void he left behind, the royal family made a choice that would alter the course of everything. They turned to the one woman who never wanted the crown, because they couldn't trust the one who did. As the public was still reeling from the shocking news of King Charles's hospitalization, decisions were being made at an astonishing pace behind palace walls. And amid the chaos, one name quietly rose above the rest. It wasn't expected, but it was respected. Princess Anne. The appointment was swift, almost surgical. In an emergency session of the Privy Council, attended by senior royals, government ministers, and constitutional experts, the need for an interim sovereign was agreed upon unanimously. With Charles unable to fulfill his royal responsibilities, continuity had to be preserved. Because the British monarchy, more than anything else, thrives on symbolism, it cannot afford to appear rudderless, not even for a single day. But who would step in? Camilla had worn the crown beside the king, but she didn't have the legal authority to rule. As queen consort, she held no automatic right to govern. Prince William, though next in line, was deliberately kept out of the equation to protect the succession, and because as a son, he was emotionally overwhelmed by the situation. What the institution needed was someone seasoned, steady, and free from ego or ambition. That's when they turned to the Princess Royal. Anne had never asked for power. She never lobbied, never gave interviews hinting at dissatisfaction, never made a spectacle of herself. Yet within the palace, many quietly recognized what had always been true. Anne was the firmest foundation the monarchy had. She didn't just understand duty, she lived it. From the moment she stepped into public service as a young royal, Anne had been known for her work ethic, her blunt honesty, and her deep loyalty to the institution. So when the Regency documents were discreetly prepared, no one raised objections. No one whispered resistance. The people who truly run the palace understood that Anne was the safest choice. Under the emergency provisions of the Regency Acts, she was named acting sovereign. No drama, no televised announcement, just a brief public statement. Princess Anne would be carrying out constitutional duties on behalf of the king during his recovery. The wording was dry, almost forgettable. But for those paying attention, it signaled a massive internal shift. Behind the scenes, insiders began calling it a soft coup, not in the traditional violent sense, but in how completely it reordered the power structure overnight. Anne, who had always stood just outside the spotlight, was now at the center of royal operations. She received daily intelligence briefings. She met with the Prime Minister. She signed official documents. She chaired weekly national security meetings. And most critically, she answered to no one but the Crown, not to Camilla, not to Charles, not even to William. Camilla, according to multiple sources, wasn't even told until after the decision had already been made, and she would never forgive it. To her, it wasn't just a breach of royal custom. It felt deeply personal, a deliberate move to erase her from any serious role in the future of the monarchy. But to those who made the call, the logic was simple. Anne was trusted precisely because she had never sought the throne. In a family plagued by ambition, pride, and controversy, Anne had been the one who never chased power, and that made her the safest person to hold it. When Camilla stormed into Buckingham Palace the morning after Anne's appointment, the atmosphere was already tense. Staff avoided her gaze. The hallways were silent. She'd heard the whispers, but hadn't truly believed them until that moment. Camilla believed she had finally secured her rightful place at the heart of the monarchy, after everything she had sacrificed and endured to be at Charles's side. But now, it wasn't just clear that she had been bypassed, she had been erased. According to two senior advisors who were present that morning, Camilla erupted when she learned the full extent of Anne's regency powers. She didn't even let the Lord Chamberlain finish the official statement. "You've handed her the throne while I'm still queen. My husband is still alive," she snapped. Her voice rose as she paced the drawing room, her tone sharp and climbing. At one point, a decorative vase, reportedly a gift from a Middle Eastern royal, was knocked to the floor and shattered. "I've waited 50 bloody years for this. 50! I was branded a homewrecker, a disgrace to the monarchy. I survived it all. And now you're handing the crown to her? She's done nothing but hide behind horses and medals." Those who overheard the outburst described Camilla as almost unrecognizable, far removed from the composed, carefully curated figure who had weathered decades of public criticism and staged redemption. In that moment, she was raw, unfiltered, furious. What made it worse? Charles was unreachable. Doctors had placed him under strict medical supervision, and only immediate family members were permitted direct contact. Camilla's phone calls were screened. Her messages passed along through intermediaries. Direct access? Denied. The palace cited medical stress. Camilla saw it differently. "They've shut me out of my own marriage," she reportedly confided to a close aide. "They plan to keep him sedated while they crown Anne behind closed doors. This isn't a regency, it's a takeover." She was angry not just because she had been excluded, but because she had been publicly humiliated. Camilla had spent years rebuilding her image, rising from scandal and condemnation. Once mocked by crowds, torn apart by tabloids, and vilified for Diana's downfall, she had slowly, carefully ascended. She had walked down the aisle at Westminster Abbey. She had stood beside Charles at his coronation. She had worn the crown. And now it all seemed meaningless. just ceremonial. Stripped away the moment real authority was at stake. Privately, Camilla lashed out at senior courtiers, demanding to know who had signed off on Anne's appointment. She allegedly called the move unlawful, unjust, and deliberately vindictive. One insider recalled a particularly bitter line from her. "They've never accepted me. Diana's memory still runs this place, and now they're trying to bury me in her shadow again, this time with a final blow." Even Prince William didn't step in. Camilla had expected the Prince of Wales to defend her, or at least question why his stepmother had been shut out of such a major decision. Instead, he remained silent. Worse, he was seen in a private meeting with Anne that same day. To Camilla, his silence spoke volumes. It felt like betrayal, a clear reminder that her role, no matter how high profile, was always conditional. In the days that followed, she canceled multiple engagements. She refused to attend a scheduled family gathering at Sandringham. Inside the palace, Camilla withdrew from her usual routines. She was said to avoid eye contact with staff and even skipped her regular morning walks in the garden. For the first time since becoming queen, she looked defeated. But her anger hadn't faded. It had simply gone quiet, turning colder, sharper, and far more intentional. In her eyes, Anne hadn't merely stepped in for Charles. She had taken the role Camilla believed should have been hers, and the queen consort had no plans to let that stand. While Camilla seethed behind closed doors, another power center within the royal family was quietly gaining strength, and she was not part of it. Prince William and Princess Catherine were among the first to be informed of King Charles's condition. Upon receiving the call, William canceled all engagements and cleared his schedule. Many expected him to prepare to assume temporary authority himself. Instead, he did something unexpected. He fully backed Princess Anne. Privately, he praised the decision to name his aunt as acting sovereign, calling her the personification of duty and the most reliable option available. His support wasn't just admiration, it was calculated. Sources close to William say he viewed Anne's appointment as a strategic buffer. With the monarchy vulnerable, bruised by scandal, aging leadership, and growing Republican sentiment, the last thing it needed was Camilla, still a polarizing figure, stepping into a position of unchecked influence. Anne, by contrast, had no ego, no hidden motives, and no ambition for power, only steady, proven leadership. And William understood just how crucial that was. Kate reportedly agreed. In quiet conversations with aides, she expressed complete trust in Princess Anne, calling her unshakable and the one person capable of steering the institution through the storm while Charles recovered. But their support didn't go unnoticed. When Camilla found out that William and Kate had endorsed Anne's regency and hadn't informed her beforehand, she took it as a personal betrayal. She thought William would defend her, one palace insider explained. Instead, he left her completely out of the loop. Camilla's allies accused the Prince and Princess of Wales of orchestrating a subtle reshaping of the monarchy, gradually shifting influence away from Charles and Camilla and toward a new model shaped by Diana's memory, Anne's respectability, and the public goodwill surrounding William and Kate. And in many ways, they weren't wrong. With Charles sidelined and Camilla increasingly pushed to the margins, the real power began to migrate. Anne handled state briefings. William took charge of foreign communications. Kate stepped into the public spotlight with ease, visiting hospitals, speaking gently about family strength, and appearing effortlessly composed on television. To the public, this new balance felt natural, even reassuring, a sign of continuity and calm. But to Camilla, it felt like a nightmare unfolding in slow motion. After decades of being cast as the outsider, the intruder forever compared to Diana, she had finally believed she had earned her place. But now, just when she thought she was part of the inner circle, the family had quietly closed ranks and left her standing alone. Anne didn't boast. She didn't have to. Her power was in her quiet presence. And in that calm, William and Kate found an ally, someone they could count on to preserve the dignity of the monarchy while they prepared for what everyone knew was coming: William's future reign. Behind palace doors, some began referring to the three of them, Anne, William, and Catherine, as the steady hand, an informal alliance of the monarchy's most trusted figures, guiding the institution through crisis without drama or division. But this wasn't just about survival. It was about reshaping what the monarchy could become. Without Camilla in a leading role, the message was clear. For Camilla, realizing that people she once considered allies were now aligning against her was a devastating blow. Her place had always been tethered to Charles, and now that he was out of sight, even if only temporarily, her authority began to fade. As the dust began to settle, the public responded swiftly and decisively. Within hours of the announcement that Princess Anne would serve as acting sovereign during King Charles's health crisis, social media platforms lit up. What began as concern for the king quickly transformed into a national moment of clarity. A surge of sentiment emerged online that caught even the palace off guard. Princess Anne should have been queen all along. Clips resurfaced of Anne through the years, attending military events, leading charity efforts, representing the crown abroad. Videos showed her shaking hands with global leaders, consoling veterans, and speaking candidly without the polish or performance. A viral TikTok titled, "The Queen We Never Had, Now the Queen We Need," racked up over 2.5 million views in just a day. Even usual critics of the monarchy were applauding Anne's quiet competence. A popular Facebook post read, "While others posed for cameras, Anne just kept showing up. No drama, no scandals. That's what royalty should be." The headlines quickly followed. The Times. In Anne, we trust the Guardian. A duty-driven monarchy. The Daily Mail. Camilla sidestepped. Was it the right call? Polling captured the moment. A YouGov flash poll conducted 2 days after the announcement revealed startling numbers. 68% supported Anne's appointment as acting monarch. 59% believed she would have made a better sovereign than Charles. Only 21% thought Camilla should have taken the role. As Anne's popularity soared, Camilla's plummeted. Clips from her public appearances were dissected online. Body language experts pointed out stiff smiles, clenched hands, and icy glares. One brief encounter with a journalist, where she said nothing and simply walked away, was clipped and circulated under the hashtag Queen Ghosted. Camilla had never fully shaken the public's memory of Diana. And now, with Anne rising, many saw the shift as poetic justice. The narrative took hold. Camilla wore the crown, but Anne carried it. Even royal commentators couldn't ignore the shift. "It's an uncomfortable truth for the palace," said royal correspondent Richard Palmer on live television. "The public has spoken. Anne is the kind of monarch they want, measured, dependable, and deeply respected." Despite Camilla's years of service, many still saw her as part of the royal controversy, not the core. Inside the palace, the communications team scrambled into crisis mode. Camilla's appearances were rescheduled. Media contacts were quietly asked to soften their tone. Photos of her with Charles were recirculated in an attempt to project unity. But it was too late. The moment had passed, and the public had made up its mind. They weren't looking for titles. They were looking for trust. And in Anne, with her crisp suits and no-nonsense attitude, they saw a symbol of exactly that. One tweet summed it up. "Camilla chased the spotlight. Anne never did. That's why one's burning out, and the other is shining." Within days, serious opinion pieces started floating the once unthinkable, a longer-term regency, with Anne continuing to serve in the king's place indefinitely. While constitutionally complex, the idea was gaining traction. Because the truth was, this wasn't just about Charles's absence. It was about a monarchy in transition, a public yearning for someone solid, someone they could believe in. And they found that in Anne. She was never crowned, but to many across the country, she had already become queen in spirit. In an institution built on tradition, one decision had quietly reshaped the royal order. King Charles's health scare wasn't just a personal crisis. It marked a defining moment for the monarchy, laying bare the rivalries, loyalties, and cracks beneath the surface. In response, the palace made a choice. It chose steadiness. It chose credibility. It chose Anne. And in doing so, it redrew the lines of power, without the need for a throne, a ceremony, or a crown. Camilla's world had changed forever. Where she once stood confidently beside the king, she now found herself distanced, her role intact in title, but eroded in influence. The people had spoken, and the institution listened. Anne didn't chase recognition. She didn't angle for attention. She never courted headlines or campaigned for popularity. She simply showed up, year after year, event after event. And in the eyes of a weary nation, that quiet, consistent presence was worth more than any jewel-studded crown. Now, as Charles recovers behind tightly guarded walls, a question lingers like morning fog over Windsor. Will he ever truly return to power? Or, in a quiet but meaningful way, has the baton already been passed? Technically, there's no king at the helm right now, but that doesn't mean there's a leadership vacuum. Princess Anne, once seen as a background figure, has stepped into the center of the monarchy with quiet strength and unwavering presence. William and Kate, offering silent but clear support, are setting the tone for the future. And Camilla, now on the outside looking in, is beginning to understand what power really means when public support disappears. The throne hasn't collapsed. It hasn't been broken. But something has changed. A new balance has taken shape, led by a woman who doesn't need the title of queen to lead with authority and clarity. The king may still be alive, but within the palace and in the hearts of many across the nation, it feels as though the crown has already moved on.